Welcome to the channel. If epic sci-fi stories are your thing, you've just found your new home. Subscribe, like, and share the adventure. The first thing Captain Lisa Reed noticed about the Galactic Council's emergency transmission wasn't the panic in the alien diplomats' triple-jointed fingers as they trembled across the console. It wasn't even the way their translator struggled with the concept of mercy in their language. It was the silence that followed 13 seconds of dead air where hope should have been. Captain Reed of the civilian transport vessel Morning Star, the Catharian ambassador's voice crackled through the static. "We know your ship carries only medical supplies and refugees. We know you have no weapons, but you are the only human vessel within range of the Nexus station, and the Devourer fleet will reach us in less than 6 hours." Lisa's weathered hands tightened on the armrests of her captain's chair. The leather worn smooth by 15 years of routine cargo runs between Earth's outer colonies. Around her, the bridge fell silent. First Officer Mark Chun stopped mid-stride, his coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips. Navigator Emma Torres looked up from her charts, her dark eyes reflecting the same impossible question that echoed in Lisa's mind. The Morning Star wasn't a warship. Hell, it barely qualified as a proper cargo hauler. Built in the orbital shipyards above Mars 20 years ago, she was designed for one thing: moving people and supplies safely from point A to point B. Her hull was reinforced for asteroid impacts, not plasma fire. Her engines were calibrated for fuel efficiency, not combat maneuvers. Her crew of 37 souls had signed up to ferry medicine to plague-stricken colonies and evacuate families from failed terraforming projects, not to face the most feared war machine in known space. "The station holds 40,000 beings," the ambassador continued, their voice breaking with something that transcended species barriers. Families, children, elders who remember the last time the Devourers came through this sector. They strip mined entire worlds, Captain. They don't just kill, they consume everything. The metal, the soil, the very atoms that once formed living beings. Lisa closed her eyes and saw her own daughter's face. Sarah, 23 now, probably tending to patients in the colony hospital on New Geneva, completely unaware that her mother was about to make a decision that would either save 40,000 lives or doom 37. "We've sent distress calls to every military vessel within 100 light years," the Catharian pressed on. "The nearest Council fleet won't arrive for 18 hours. The nearest human naval squadron is even further out. You're all we have." Mark set down his coffee and moved to stand beside her chair. In his eyes, she saw the same impossible mix of terror and determination that she felt in her own chest. They'd served together for 8 years, hauled everything from grain shipments to refugees fleeing the border wars. They'd never run from a fight, but they'd never looked for one either. "Ma'am," Emma called from her station, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they were discussing. "I'm pulling up the tactical data now. The Devourer fleet... It's massive. 12 heavy cruisers, escort destroyers, and something the sensors are having trouble classifying. It's reading as one ship, but it's the size of a small moon." Lisa opened her eyes and studied the holographic display that materialized above the bridge. The enemy fleet moved through space like a swarm of metallic locusts, their ships bristling with weapons that could crack planets. At the center, the massive flagship pulsed with an energy signature that made the Morning Star sensors scream warnings. Every great bond starts with a single moment of courage. HFY Chronicle Stories is just beginning, and your support matters. If you love emotional sci-fi tales, forbidden connections, and stories that stay with you, hit subscribe. It's free, and it helps us bring more stories from the stars to you. The silence stretched for another heartbeat before Lisa stood up, her decision crystallizing like starfrost on a viewport. "Emma, set course for Nexus Station. Maximum burn." "Captain," Mark started. "I know what we are, Mark. I know what we're not." She turned to face her crew, seeing her own resolve reflected in their faces. But 40,000 people are about to die, and we're the only ones who can do anything about it. Maybe we can't fight those ships, but we can buy time. We can evacuate who we can. And maybe, just maybe, we can show these devourers that humans don't abandon people who need help." The bridge erupted in controlled chaos as her crew leaped into action, their training overriding their fear. As the Morning Star's engines roared to life and she felt the familiar push of acceleration, Lisa Reed couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to become something none of them had ever intended to be. They were about to become warriors. Nexus Station sprawled across space like a metallic flower, its 17 arms stretching out from a central hub that had housed diplomatic meetings for over 2 centuries. As the Morning Star approached, Lisa could see the frantic activity through the transparent aluminum viewports, beings of dozens of species rushing through corridors, loading shuttles, preparing for an evacuation that everyone knew wouldn't be fast enough. "Captain, we're receiving an incoming transmission," Communications Officer Jake Morris announced, his young face pale but determined. "It's from Station Commander Vex." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a tall, angular being with silver skin and eyes like liquid mercury. Commander Vex had been stationed here for 30 years, had seen the rise and fall of 3 different galactic governments, but Lisa had never seen fear in those ancient eyes until now. "Captain Reed," Vex's voice carried the weight of impossible responsibility. "I cannot ask you to stay. Your ship, your crew, you have families, lives beyond this moment. But if you could help with the evacuation, even for an hour." "We're not leaving, Commander," Lisa said, cutting through the diplomatic pleasantries. "What do you need?" Something shifted in Vex's expression, surprise perhaps, or the first glimmer of hope they'd felt since the Devourer fleet had been detected. "Our evacuation shuttles can only carry 2,000 beings per run. At current capacity, we can save perhaps 8,000 before they arrive. The rest don't have to die today," Mark said, stepping forward. "Captain, what if we don't try to fight them ship to ship? What if we fight them the way humans have always fought when we're outgunned?" Lisa turned to her first officer, seeing the spark of an idea forming in his eyes. "Talk to me." "The station's power core," Mark said, his voice gaining confidence. "It's a fusion reactor built to last centuries. But if we could overload it at just the right moment, when their ships are close enough to the station." "You're talking about turning the entire station into a bomb," Emma breathed from her navigation console. "Not a bomb," Mark corrected. "A trap." Commander Vex's image flickered as an explosion somewhere on the station sent tremors through the structure. "The outer defense platforms are failing," they reported. "We have perhaps 4 hours now, not 6. Lisa felt the familiar sensation of a plan crystallizing in her mind, the same feeling she'd had when threading the Morning Star through the asteroid fields of Kepler-7, or navigating the gravitational anomalies around the neutron star in the Vega system. It was dangerous, probably impossible, and definitely not something a cargo hauler should attempt at. It was also the only chance 40,000 people had. "Commander, we need you to prepare the station for emergency power rerouting," she said. "Can your engineering teams bypass the safety protocols on the fusion core?" "Captain Reed, what you're suggesting?" "What I'm suggesting is that we give these devourers something they've never encountered before," Lisa interrupted. "They're used to overwhelming force, to crushing anything in their path. They're not used to prey that fights back smart." Over the next 3 hours, the Morning Star became the nerve center of the most desperate defense in Nexus Station's history. Lisa's crew worked alongside alien engineers, bypassing safety systems, rerouting power conduits, and preparing for a plan that violated every rule of engagement in the Galactic Council's military handbook. Chief Engineer Bob Williams disappeared into the station's power core with a team of Catharian technicians, his toolkit expanded with alien technology he'd never seen before, but somehow understood. Captain, we can overload the core, but someone's going to have to stay behind to trigger it. The timing has to be perfect. Too early and their shields will absorb the blast. Too late and they'll detect the power buildup. I'll stay, Lisa said. Without hesitation. No, you won't, Mark replied firmly. This ship needs its captain, and those evacuees need someone they trust to get them home. I'll handle the trigger. Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but the look in Mark's eyes stopped her. It wasn't resignation, it was purpose. The same look she'd seen in her father's eyes when he'd volunteered for the dangerous atmospheric research. Missions that had eventually claimed his life. The look that said some things were worth dying for. There has to be another way, she said. There is, Emma called from her station, her voice tight with concentration. What if we don't trigger it manually? What if we use the morning star itself as the trigger? She turned to face them, her expression intense. We modify our sensor array to detect the precise moment, their flagship's shield cycle for their main weapon charging sequence. Every ship that size has to drop shields for 0.7 seconds. During primary weapon charge. If we time it right, if we're close enough to their formation when the core goes, we'll be vaporized along with them, Mark finished. Not all of us, Emma said quietly. The station has escape pods. We could evacuate most of the crew, leave a skeleton team to pilot the ship into position. 3 people, maybe 4. Lisa felt the weight of command settle on her shoulders like a familiar coat. Outside the viewports, she could see the first glimmers of the Devourer fleet on the long-range sensors, their ships moving through space with the inexorable patience of death itself. 40,000 lives, 37 crew members. Mathematics had never felt so heavy. The evacuation proceeded with controlled desperation. Families huddled together in the Morning Star's cargo bays, their possessions reduced to whatever they could carry. Children who had never seen war clung to parents whose eyes held the hollow knowledge of impending loss. The ship groaned under the weight of beings it was never designed to carry, but somehow, impossibly, the old girl held together. Lisa walked through the makeshift refugee quarters, offering words of comfort in a dozen languages she'd picked up during her years, plying the trade routes. A young Andromedan mother clutched her infant child, whispering lullabies in a language that sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. An elderly Terran couple sat hand in hand, their weathered faces serene with the acceptance that came from 8 decades of facing life's uncertainties together. Captain, Commander Vex approached, their silver skin dimmed with exhaustion. The last evacuation shuttle has departed. We have saved 11,347 beings. It is more than we dared hope for when this day began. But not enough, Lisa thought. Never enough. 28,653 people remained on the station, and they were running out of time. Status report, she called as she returned to the bridge. Devourer fleet will be in weapons range in 43 minutes, Emma reported. Their formation is holding steady flagship in the center, heavy cruisers in a protective sphere around it. Engineering update. Bob's voice crackled over the com from deep within the station's core. We've got the overload sequence ready, but Captain, this thing's going to light up like a supernova. The blast radius will extend for at least 50,000 kilometers in every direction. Lisa studied the tactical display, watching the enemy ships creep closer with each passing second. The plan was insane, but it was also elegant in its simplicity. The Devourers expected overwhelming force to be met with submission or futile resistance. They didn't expect prey to turn predator, to use their own momentum against them. All crew. This is the captain, she announced over the ship's intercom. In 30 minutes, we're going to attempt something that's never been tried before. We're going to take out an entire Devourer fleet with a cargo hauler and some very creative engineering. I won't lie to you, our chances of survival are minimal. But sometimes, minimal is enough. She paused, looking around at the faces of her crew people, who had signed up for routine cargo runs, and found themselves at the center of the most important battle of their lives. If anyone wants to leave with the escape pods, now is the time. No judgment, no shame. You didn't sign up for this. The bridge fell silent. Jake Morris, barely 25 years old, looked at his hands for a long moment before raising his head. "Captain, with respect, where exactly would we escape to? If we don't stop them here, they'll just hit the next system, and the next one after that. Besides," Emma added with a grin that didn't quite reach her eyes, "I've always wanted to see what this old girl could do in a real fight." Mark stepped forward, his decision evident in the set of his shoulders. "Captain, request permission to stay aboard and assist with the final approach." "Mark, Lisa," he said quietly, using her first name for the first time in years. "We've been flying together for 8 years. We've hauled grain through pirate-infested space, evacuated plague victims from quarantine zones, and delivered medical supplies to colonies that everyone else had written off. If we're going to go out, let's go out doing what we do best, helping people." Through the viewports, the first flickers of weapons fire began to illuminate the darkness as the Devourer fleet engaged the station's automated defense platforms. The platforms were designed to handle pirates and raiders, not a full military assault. They lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. "All escape pods away," Jake reported. "Skeleton crew remaining: Captain Reed, First Officer Chun, Navigation Officer Torres, Communications Officer Morris, and Chief Engineer Williams." "That's not a skeleton crew," Lisa muttered. "That's barely enough people to keep life support running." "It's enough," Emma said from her position at the helm. "Engines at full burn, approaching the station's outer perimeter. The Devourers are taking the bait. They're moving into formation for a siege bombardment." On the main screen, the enemy flagship dominated the display. It was a nightmare of twisted metal and pulsing energy conduits, its hull scarred by the debris of 1,000 conquered worlds. Smaller vessels swarmed around it like remora around a shark, each one bristling with enough firepower to level a city. "Bob's status on the overload," Lisa called. "Ready to go, Captain. Just say the word, and this station becomes the biggest firework in galactic history." Lisa watched the enemy formation continue its approach, their ships maintaining perfect discipline as they closed in for the kill. They had no idea what was waiting for them. No idea that sometimes the most dangerous opponent was the one with nothing left to lose. "All stations, prepare for final approach," she ordered. "Emma, bring us around to attack Vector 77 Alpha. Jake, open a channel to the Devourer flagship, Captain." Jake's voice carried surprise. "If we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Put me through." The main screen flickered, and suddenly Lisa found herself face to face with something that had haunted the nightmares of a dozen species. The Devourer commander stood nearly 3 meters tall, its exoskeleton gleaming like polished obsidian. 4 arms ended in razor-sharp claws, and its compound eyes reflected the bridge lights like fragments of broken stars. "Human vessel," the creature's voice was like grinding metal. "You pilot a cargo ship into battle against a war fleet. Your species truly is as foolish as our intelligence report suggested." Lisa smiled, feeling a strange sense of peace settle over her. "You know what your intelligence reports got wrong?" The creature tilted its massive head. "They didn't mention that humans don't know when to quit." The morning star screamed through space on a collision course with destiny, her engines pushed beyond their design limits, her hull shuddering with each micro-adjustment Emma made to their trajectory. Behind them, Nexus Station began to glow with an ominous light as its fusion core built toward critical overload. "Distance to target formation, 15,000 kilometers in closing," Emma announced, her voice steady despite the impossible odds they faced. "Flagship is beginning its bombardment sequence. I'm reading massive power buildups in their primary weapon arrays." Lisa gripped her command chair as the ship bucked through the gravitational turbulence, created by the massive enemy vessels. Through the viewports, she could see the Devourer flagship looming larger with each passing second, its hull bristling with weapon ports that could vaporize planets. Around it, the escort vessels maintained their protective formation, oblivious to the trap that was about to snap shut. "Jake, are you recording this?" she asked. "Every second, Captain. If anyone survives to tell this story, they'll have it all." "Good. Mark, take tactical. I want to know the instant their shields cycle." Mark slid into the weapons console. Not that the Morning Star had any weapons worth mentioning. Just a few mining lasers designed for clearing debris. But the sensors were military grade, salvaged from a decommissioned Navy cruiser years ago, when Lisa had needed better navigation equipment for the dangerous routes through the Outer Rim. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple shield harmonics," Mark reported. "The flagship's running a rotating frequency pattern smart. But there's still going to be that vulnerability window when they fire their main guns." On the screen, the Devourer commander watched their approach with what might have been amusement. Behind the creature, Lisa could see other members of its species working at alien control stations, their movements efficient and practiced. These weren't mindless monsters, they were seasoned military professionals who had conquered star systems with the same casual precision that Lisa used to plot cargo routes. "Distance, 10,000 kilometers, Emma called. "They're locking weapons on us." "Let them," Lisa said. "We need them focused on us, not on what's happening behind them." Through the rear sensors, she could see Nexus Station beginning to collapse in on itself as the fusion core reached critical mass. The station's 17 arms folded inward like the petals of a dying flower, the massive structure transforming into something that would, in exactly 4 minutes and 12 seconds, become a miniature star. "Incoming fire!" Mark shouted. The space around the Morning Star erupted in plasma bursts and particle beams. Most of the shots went wide. The Devourers were toying with them, like a cat playing with a wounded mouse. But a few found their mark, and the cargo haulers' shields flared and buckled under the assault. "Hull breach on Deck 4, Jake reported. "Emergency containment holding, but barely. Emma, evasive maneuvers. Keep us on course, but make us a harder target." The Morning Star danced through space in a pattern that would have been impossible for a military vessel, her civilian design allowing for maneuvers that would have torn apart a purpose-built warship. Lisa felt a surge of pride for her old girl. She might not be pretty, and she certainly wasn't meant for combat, but she was tough as recycled steel and twice as stubborn. "Distance, 5,000 kilometers, Emma announced. "Captain, at this range, when the station goes off." "I know," Lisa said quietly. "Jake, send a final message to Earth. Tell them the crew of the Morning Star remembered what it means to be human." The Devourer flagship filled their forward screens now, its hull so massive that Lisa could make out individual weapon emplacements and armor plates. Somewhere inside that nightmare of metal and malice, thousands of enemy soldiers prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory. They were about to learn otherwise. "Mark, status on their shield cycling?" "Primary weapons charging. Charging." "Captain, they're about to fire everything they have at us." "When they do, I see it." Lisa watched the enemy ship's weapon ports glow with building energy. "Emma, full power to forward shields. Whatever happens next, we need to survive long enough to trigger the station." The Devourer flagship's main batteries opened fire in a coordinated salvo that could have cracked a moon. The Morning Star's shields flared brilliant white as terawatts of energy slammed into them, overloading every protective system on the ship. Sparks cascaded from damaged consoles, and the bridge lights flickered as power conduits overloaded throughout the vessel. "Shields at 7%, Jake called over the alarms. "We can't take another hit like that." "We won't have to," Mark said, his voice tight with concentration. "Captain, their shields are cycling down." Now behind them, Nexus Station reached critical mass. For a moment that lasted forever, a new star blazed to life in the depths of space. The fusion explosion raced outward nearly the speed of light. A wall of pure energy that consumed everything in its path. The shockwave hit the Devourer fleet, just as their flagship shields dropped for the crucial 7/10 of a second, needed to recharge their primary weapons. The massive vessel, caught with its defenses down, simply ceased to exist. One moment, it was a mountain of metal and malice. The next it was expanding plasma and scattered atoms. The escort vessels, protected by their own shields, survived the initial blast but found themselves caught in a cascade of secondary explosions as their flagship's death throes triggered a chain reaction throughout the fleet. One by one, the great warships that had terrorized a dozen star systems died in fire and fury. Lisa felt the morning star tumbling through space, her systems failing one by one as the massive energies, unleashed by the station's destruction, overloaded every circuit on the ship. But through the chaos, through the alarms and the sparks and the taste of smoke in the recycled air, she heard something impossible. Silence. The weapons fire had stopped. The enemy fleet was gone. 40,000 people would live to see another sunrise, because 5 humans in a cargo hauler had refused to know when they were beaten. "Status report," she croaked, her throat raw from breathing smoke. "Life support is holding," Emma reported weakly from her station. "Engines are completely fried, but we're alive." "Communications are down," Jake added, "but I'm picking up signals on the emergency frequencies." "Captain, it's the evacuation fleet. They're coming back." Lisa closed her eyes and felt tears of relief streaming down her face. They had done it. Against every odd, against every law of physics and common sense. They had done it. The Morning Star hadn't been built for war. But when war came, she had become exactly what the galaxy needed her to be. 3 months later, Captain Lisa Reed stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Nexus Station 2. Watching as construction crews put the finishing touches on the memorial wall. 40,000 names were etched into the black granite knot. The names of the dead, but the names of the living. The ones who had been saved when a cargo hauler decided to pick a fight with the most feared war machine in known space. The Morning Star floated in space dock nearby, her hull scarred but intact, undergoing repairs that would take another 6 weeks to complete. The old girl had become something of a celebrity in the 3 months since the Battle of Nexus Station. Reporters from across the galaxy had come to interview her crew. Military strategists had studied her tactical data, and shipbuilders had begun incorporating lessons learned from her impossible victory into their newest designs. But to Lisa, she was still just the ship that had gotten them all home. "Captain Reed," a familiar voice called from behind her. Lisa turned to see Commander Vex approaching, their silver skin gleaming in the light from the nearby star. The Catharian diplomat had been instrumental in the station's reconstruction, working tirelessly to ensure that the new facility would be even better defended than its predecessor. "Commander," Lisa nodded. "How are the new defensive systems coming along?" "Better than expected," Vex replied, joining her at the observation window. "The Terran Engineering Corps has provided us with some truly innovative designs. It seems that human military thinking has evolved considerably since your victory here." Lisa smiled at that. In the months since the battle, humanity had gone from being seen as a relatively minor species in galactic politics to being courted as potential allies by every major power in the region. The fact that humans had managed to destroy an entire Devourer fleet with a cargo hauler and some creative engineering had impressed people who thought they had seen everything. "Any word on Mark's recovery?" Vex asked gently. "The doctors say he'll make a full recovery," Lisa replied. "The radiation exposure was severe, but human physiology is apparently more resilient than anyone expected. He should be back on duty within the month." Mark had spent 2 weeks in intensive care after the battle, his body ravaged by the exotic radiation released by the station's fusion explosion. But even from his hospital bed, he'd been working with military engineers to develop new defensive strategies based on their experience at Nexus Station. And the rest of your crew? Emma's been promoted to captain of her own vessel, the new Morningstar-class cargo hauler they're building at the Mars Orbital Yards. Jake's been accepted into the Galactic Communications Academy. Bob's become something of a legend among engineers. He's got job offers from half the shipyards in known space. And you, Captain? What does the future hold for Lisa Reed? Lisa was quiet for a long moment, watching as a small transport shuttle approached the station's docking bay. Through its viewports, she could see families returning to reclaim their lives, their faces bright with hope and determination. "I'm going back to what I do best," she said finally. "Hauling cargo, ferrying passengers, helping people get from where they are to where they need to be. The galaxy's got plenty of warships now, but it'll always need people willing to carry medicine to plague-stricken colonies and evacuate families from failed terraforming projects. Even after everything you've accomplished, the Galactic Council has offered you a commission as Admiral of the new Human Defense Fleet," Lisa chuckled. "I appreciate the honor, Commander, but I'm not an admiral. I'm a cargo hauler who got lucky. Besides, someone's got to keep the Morning Star flying, and she's gotten used to having her original crew aboard." Through the viewport, she could see the old ship's running lights blinking in the familiar pattern that meant all systems were operational. Her crew was aboard, running final diagnostics before their next mission, a routine cargo run to the outer colonies, carrying medical supplies and prefabricated housing components to a world that was rebuilding after a natural disaster. It was exactly the kind of mission they'd been running for years before the Battle of Nexus Station, and exactly the kind of mission they'd be running for years to come. Because that's what humans did. They helped. They showed up when things looked hopeless. They improvised solutions to impossible problems. And they never, ever gave up on people who needed them. "There is one thing I wanted to tell you," Vex said as they prepared to part ways. "The other species in the Galactic Council have been studying your tactical data extensively. They're trying to understand how a single cargo vessel managed to defeat an entire war fleet. And what have they concluded? That human beings are the most dangerous species in known space," Vex replied with what might have been a smile. "Not because you're the strongest or the fastest or the most technologically advanced, but because when you're facing impossible odds, when any rational being would surrender or flee, you have this habit of doing something completely unexpected." Lisa nodded, thinking of the moment when she'd made the decision to turn the Morning Star toward Nexus Station instead of away from it. It hadn't been a tactical calculation or a strategic decision. It had simply been the right thing to do. "The Morning Star wasn't built for war," she said quietly. "No," Vex agreed. "But when war came, she became exactly what the galaxy needed her to be, just like her crew." As Lisa made her way back to the docking bay where her ship waited, she reflected on the strange turns life could take. 3 months ago, she'd been an unknown cargo hauler running routine supply missions between the outer colonies. Now military academies across the galaxy taught courses on the Battle of Nexus Station, and her ship's name had become synonymous with the idea that sometimes the most unlikely heroes were the ones who changed everything. But at the end of the day, she was still just Lisa Reed, captain of a cargo hauler with a crew that had become family and a ship that had somehow managed to save 40,000 lives by refusing to know when she was beaten that the Morning Star wasn't built for war. But she'd become something more than anyone had ever imagined possible. She'd become hope itself, painted in star-scarred steel and powered by the simple human conviction that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the odds. And tomorrow, she'd wake up and do it all over again, one cargo run at a time, one life at a time, one small act of courage at a time, because that's what humans did. They showed up,